Welcome one and all to the first annual LEGO-lden Globes Award ceremony, the show that's essentially an elaborate excuse for me to shit out my LEGO related opinions for the year. The show is not affiliated with LEGO or the Golden Globes in any way. The name was actually entirely coincidental, if you can believe it. Imagine my shock when for this wondrous occasion, your boy will be presenting awards based on the following categories, and to mark the occasion, I'm wearing a suit. So let's kick things off with our first category, and one of the things I value most in a LEGO set, the build experience. This is the only category where I actually needed to own the set, so there could be a better choice that I missed out on, but I'm personally giving it to the Lord of the Rings Rivendell set. The build was varied and interesting all throughout, with basically no repetition. Even the roof tiles weren't nearly as bad as they looked, and I found the tower, the gazebo area, the river, and the Fellowship Council area especially enjoyable. The trees were as finicky and annoying as LEGO trees always are, but even then I can say this was comfortably the most fun set build from 2023. For the sake of balance, let's now talk about the worst build experience of the year. I don't think anyone will disagree with me when I say it's Captain America's shield. The entire build consists of more or less the same sub-assembly over and over and over again. There's a heinous amount of repetition in the set, to a point that the entire 3,128 piece set is finished after just 129 steps. For reference, the similarly priced boutique hotel modular building, with 62 less pieces in it, takes over 442 steps to complete. I doubt anything came close to this for 2023. Now let's switch gears and talk about the LEGO group as a whole for a while, starting with the best theme of the year. Despite what you may think, Star Wars isn't necessarily guaranteed to be the best theme every year just because it's my favorite. In fact, up until maybe last year, I don't think I'd consider Star Wars the best theme at any point since I started collecting, especially with Speed Champions going strong the entire time. With that said, LEGO Star Wars was so exceptionally good this year that even beyond my personal preference for the theme, I think they just knocked it out of the park. 2 clone battle packs, 2 clone helmet sets, 2 solid dioramas, an insane Ahsoka wave including a new ghost, a Republic gunship, and of course a UCS Venator featuring a new Captain Rex. When the latter half of the year first leaked on April Fool's Day, despite the source being as credible as it gets and them being so adamant that it's real, I couldn't believe it. I thought it was a big April Fool's joke. It was too good to be true on so many levels, but all of those sets actually happened. Insane year, couldn't have asked for more really. On the flip side, for the worst theme of the year, I originally picked LEGO Architecture because I was disappointed that they only came out with a single set this year, and it was one that I didn't really care for. But then I remembered a theme that was so shockingly bad this year that it was probably the worst year for a theme I've ever seen, and that was DC Comics superheroes. Not only did this superhero theme only come out with 12 sets this year compared to Marvel's 41, but of those 12 sets, 7 of them were polybags, 1 was an overpriced junior set, and another was an overpriced buildable figure. The only 2 proper playsets that came out this year were both good, but really overpriced, and had basically the same minifigures as each other and the junior set. And to top it all off, you have the insultingly overpriced Batcave Shadowbox set, and that's it. If you think about the amount of superheroes under the DC theme and all the potential sets they could and should make for it, this is actually abysmal, easily the worst theme this year. Sticking to the LEGO group broadly, let's now talk about the decisions they made this year, both good and bad. In terms of their best decision, I'm not going to do the cop-out thing here and just pick my favorite set and say, it was a great decision to make that set. I'd want it to be a change they made more like the Adult Welcome push, or the Speed Champions car width change from a few years ago. It's pretty hard to find a single decision this year that stands out like those did, but I do have a handful worth crediting here. Firstly, bringing back the MIDI scale sets for LEGO Star Wars was a great decision, I think. Lots of potential there going forward, even just the rumoured sets for next wave is pretty exciting. Opening a second LEGO store in Ireland was a great decision too, although I may be slightly biased on that front. And the last honourable mention I'll give to the return of the Lord of the Rings theme. Even though it's only been Rivendell and 3 Brickhead sets so far, I think it's a theme with so much potential, especially with Barad-dûr coming out later in 2024. But I think the best decision LEGO made this year, although it's kind of a decision they made 2 years ago, is the launch of LEGO Fortnite. I think LEGO and Fortnite is a match made in heaven, especially when you consider the shared demographics of Fortnite's player base and LEGO, and the huge variety of unique, vibrant characters that they can make minifigures out of. I think the game itself could do with some changes, especially to the building system, tool durability, incentive to build, and mob variety. Right now I think it's just a worse Valheim if I'm honest, but if they update the game somewhat regularly and come out with a full collectible minifigure series in real life, then I think this collab collaboration has incredible potential, and I'm very excited to see where they go with it. In terms of the worst decision LEGO made this year, there are two things that really stood out to me for the wrong reasons. The first thing, what I'll call the runner-up, is with LEGO Star Wars when they replaced the €15 accessory packs with the mechs for the same price. I think you can argue that the mechs aren't that bad and that they're a cheap way to get really high quality minifigures like the Boba Fett or the Vader with arm printing, but I think the value they're giving to the customer here is so much worse than with the accessory slash blister packs. You used to get 3 minifigures for €15 with a small but relevant side build, and now you're getting 1 minifigure and a useless, ugly mech build for the same price. Terrible decision, I hate it. But the worst decision they made this year, I would say, without a doubt, would be switching the CMF packaging from paper bags to cardboard boxes. The idea of blind bag minifigures was already borderline gambling before, but you could at least wave away that argument because you could feel your way to the figures you want in stores, with loads of guides online showing you how. But with the cardboard boxes, this is no longer possible, which is genuinely such an awful anti-consumer decision. It basically turns collectible minifigures into a loot box system where you have no way to know what you're buying before you've already bought it, which is already shitty from a moral standpoint, but it only gets worse because it introduces another problem in the form of people ripping the boxes open in stores trying to find the figure they want. It's just shit. Horrible decision. I really hope they revert it, but I doubt they will. And now it's time to move on to the natural enemy of the LEGO collector, value for money. I do want to give an honourable mention here to the LEGO Ideas Viking Village set. €140 for over 2100 pieces and a really good looking and decently sized display piece feels really good to me. But I think the winner for the best value set of 2023 just needs to be the Ninjago City Market. It's a 2 baseplate wide, extremely colourful and lively modular building with 21 minifigures and over 6100 pieces, all for just €370. Yes, it's a lot, but it's an absolutely absurd package you get for your money, so I really can't give it anything else. And as for the worst value set of 2023, one set this year really stood out below the rest, I think, and as I alluded to earlier, that's the Batcave Shadow Box set. I do understand the purpose of the set, and I appreciate that it needed a lot of pieces to create the box and all that, and the box does look cool. Like, I really like the shape of the bat cutout, but to me this looks like an €80 set wrapped in €320 of just wasted pieces, wasted space, and very little value otherwise to justify the price. For the same price as the Mos Eisley Cantina set, not only do you not get a particularly engaging looking build, but you only get 7 minifigures, of which 3 are just Batman, 1 is some goober who isn't even the top result in a Google search of his name, and none of them have any leg printing. Again, I can see the value in the shadow box idea, but I look at this and I think maybe €250 is the most I'd pay for it. 300 would be a lot, but borderline fair if it came with a bunch of figures, but for what you get for €400, I just think this is a robbery, honestly. To me anyway. Let's talk about expectations for a second, and talk about the most disappointing set of 2023. So to set the scene, there was a €210 slot rumoured for the end of the year with LEGO Star Wars, and I expected it to be like a new Jabba sail barge, or at the very least some large play scale set. For that price, you have endless possibilities. It wasn't that, so that's one layer of disappointment. But then the rumours came out that it would be a buildable Chewbacca, and I at least expected it to be like a Black Panther bust with a super detailed face and fur from the chest up. Even at that, I wasn't excited, but I was cautiously optimistic, thinking it might fit in well with the brick build characters, but instead we got this statue-like abomination with a goofy face and a super weird pose that looks like he's holding a piss. No set has ever disappointed me on multiple levels quite like this one, and definitely no other set this year even came close. And now, more positively, the most surprising set of the year. Everyone has a dream set. An answer for the question, if you could have one set based on anything, what would it be? Well, I had 2. The first was a modular compatible large-scale Avengers Tower, which they actually made, which was incredible, but not overly surprising because they already did the modular Sanctum Sanctorum and Daily Bugle, so the Avengers Tower was kind of a logical next step. I kind of think that was bound to happen eventually, you know, a matter of when, not if. But my other dream set was a UCS Venator, and this is a set I never thought would exist. Between LEGO's obsession with the original trilogy for UCS sets, their reluctance to make anything based on the Clone Wars until recently, and with how controversial their last foray into prequel UCS sets were, I figured it would be forever out of the question, especially considering the scale it would need to be. So the most surprising set of the year for me is definitely the UCS Venator, because honestly, I have it sitting behind me and I can still hardly believe they made it. In terms of the best display set of the year, I think the answer is obvious with the Lord of the Rings Rivendell. The shape, the angles, the texture, textures, the natural elements, the colors. Like, it was just an exceptionally beautiful set, and I don't think it winning here can be contested. But for the sake of me not repeating myself by talking about it multiple times this video, I'm going to throw out an honorable mention here to the Hogwarts Castle and Grounds set. I'm not a Harry Potter fan by any stretch of the imagination, but I find myself looking at the set and thinking, this is one of the most beautiful sets I've ever seen. If this year didn't have Rivendell, this honestly would have taken this category. But this year did have Rivendell, so honestly, what can you do? And of course, we must balance things out by singling out and shaming the ugliest set of 2023. And we already talked about it, it's obviously the buildable Chewbacca. It's such a cursed set that you really don't need me to tell you that it's ugly as sin. So for the sake of variety, let's throw in some dishonorable mentions here, starting with the BTS Dynamite set from LEGO Ideas. My god, what a simple and ugly build. Like, you have nothing but studs in one place, then it's perfectly smooth, then it's a weird mixture of both. The colors are all over the place, which, I don't know, it might be accurate, but it looks messy and unpleasant. I just don't vibe with the set at all, especially looking at the sets that got rejected to make room for it. The buildable Chewbacca still exists though, so there's no real worry that anything else would win out this category. The designer, Cesar Soares, is extremely talented too. Like, he's done a bunch of the helmet sets, the Mos Eisley Cantina, the Treehouse, a few UCS sets, and a few solid playsets too. I think this was just a set idea that was borderline impossible to make look good, unfortunately. Moving on from display sets, let's give some love to the playsets of 2023. I'm looking pretty much exclusively at LEGO Star Wars because that's what I'm into. Like, there's no Marvel set that can dethrone it for me. With that, there's one clear winner here with the Ghost and Phantom 2 set based on the Ahsoka show. It's not perfect. I think the minifigure selection is sorely lacking, the Jason minifigure is completely wrong, and the build experience wasn't incredible. Like, it was fairly standard as playsets go. But I think the final set looks amazing. It feels so weighty and chunky in your hand. It's just a solid, great looking set, and the inclusion of the Phantom 2 really makes this a great package, well deserving of the best playset title for 2023. Moving on and looking a little smaller now at the minifigures, I'm really happy to say that this is a really competitive category this year, to a point that I need to give out a few honorable mentions here just to give some credit where it's due. The new Din Djarin figure with the new helmet print and Darksaber mold, the Bo-Katan figure from the Spider Tank, and the Luke figure from the UCS X-Wing are among the best ever produced, with full printing pretty much everywhere, and Luke even having dual molded legs too. But to me, the best minifigure of the year, and you can probably guess what's coming next, is Captain Rex. Great helmet, full printing all over including the arms, and a cloth pauldron on top of that. Yes, it has its flaws, but it was the only figure this year that when I first had it in my hands, I felt genuine joy and excitement. There was so much prestige around this character too, which probably contributed to that feeling, but still, I'm definitely putting it as the best minifigure of 2023. Now, there's the worst minifigure of the year, and unfortunately, I have a few dishonorable mentions to get through here too. The Jason minifigure has a completely inaccurate hairpiece that's beyond inexcusable. Captain Vaughn is basically a regular 332nd Trooper, but with a visor that is both unprinted and the wrong color. Also, as pointed out by M&M Productions, his torso print also should have been grey, much like Commander Cody, and when you combine all these things together, it really isn't good enough. But I think easily the worst figure of the year for me is Commander Fox from the Coruscant Guard gunship. I genuinely don't think they could have made this figure worse if they tried. The lack of a physical waist cape is a shame, but the totally inaccurate chest printing is completely inexcusable. Like, you can't even play devil's advocate about it, it's just wrong. Moreover, and what I consider the straw that broke your mother's back, is that the rest of the printing on the chest once again isn't printed with nearly enough opacity. So what's supposed to be white and what's advertised as being white actually appears as this kind of pinkish color, and it's just bad. It's the only figure I picked up this year that I thought, wow, that seriously isn't good enough. And so I'm comfortable calling it the worst minifigure of 2023. And finally, the most prestigious award of the night, the best overall set of 2023. The LEGO set of the year, if you will. Both of my dream set ideas came out this year with the Avengers Tower and the UCS Venator, both of which were done incredibly well, and yet both of them are just runners-up to what I believe is not just the best set of the year, but of all time, with the Lord of the Rings Rivendell. I've already said that this had the best build experience of the year, and that it was all in service of creating what I've called the most beautiful set of the year. It's a set that cut absolutely no corners and just felt like the best product they could have possibly made. It came with 15 extremely high-quality named minifigures of every major protagonist you could have asked for, done to as high a quality as you could ever hope for, with unique prints on almost all of them, dual-molded solid legs on quite a few, and multiple custom weapon molds and new headpieces. If you consider the IP value, the build experience, the finished model, the minifigures, and the fact that it has over 6,100 pieces, I genuinely wouldn't have felt ripped off if this was €700. Honestly, at €600, I think I'd be sitting here making a case that it's still pretty good value. The fact that it's selling for just 500 is crazy to me. Imagine unironically saying that a €500 LEGO set is underpriced. Like, that's how good I think this thing is. This is the GOAT, and I can't see it getting dethroned possibly ever. Easily deserving of 2023's Set of the Year. And that concludes this year's LEGO-lden Globes. I hope you enjoyed this disguised LEGO retrospective. I might bring it back next year, maybe with more awards if I can think of any. It kind of just depends on how much of a pain this is to edit. Anyway, thanks for watching, and farewell.